thing that I really like about Dragon Ball is it is like peak shonen. It is the essence of what shonen is. It makes me realize like Dragon Ball is everything I've ever wanted in a shonen. Basically, my story is that I always watched it sort of in the background, and I watched it for like 5 years, like occasionally, and I didn't really obsess over. I was binging it, but like very casually. Definitely like the Cell Saga was one of like the best arcs, probably the best arc in the series, and I definitely liked it. I finished around like 2014, 2015, and that was when they announced Dragon Ball Super, which is basically the manga sequel that's not drawn by Akira Toriyama, and it was getting animated. I don't really have time to watch the anime like week by week, so I decided to wait on it and then just binge it, right? I started watching it in 2018. I think that was when it finished. So yeah, so that's when I started watching it, and then I think by the time I finished the anime, it was like 2020. And the thing is, like over the time that I was watching it, I would be like, oh yeah, like this is great, and there are these parts that I like. I wasn't like crazy about Super. I think the animation is kind of poor, and I really don't like battle towers. Basically, what I liked about Dragon Ball was that the battle towers part, which is like the martial arts tournament, it was never really about just fighting the next guy and, you know, getting more powerful just linearly. It was always like, there's a martial arts tournament, but something happens, they fight, but it's for like a different reason. And the martial arts tournament is usually like just in the background. It's not really the main focus. And there's like so much more to it than the martial arts tournament. There's always like another plot line happening. And that's why I didn't really like Super, because Super is the exact battle tower type of story that I've always never liked. And now it's doing what Dragon Ball didn't do originally. But yeah, so Dragon Ball Super, it was like, it was still fine. I think, like, I really liked it just because of, like, the little moments between the characters, and I love the characters. Also, I like the whole, like, it's a sequel, the characters grow up, the kids grow up, and there's like new relationships between the characters, and I love that. Dragon Ball in general, it was like a background thing. Like, I still liked it, I still watched it, but I didn't like obsess over it. Oh, and one of the things that drove me to complete Super was when Dragon Ball Super Broly came out, and obviously it was a big thing for old fans because they basically made one of the characters, Broly, who was originally from the non-canon movies of Dragon Ball Z, and they're basically making him canon now and in a new story. When I watched that movie, it basically changed my whole perspective on Dragon Ball, and like it made me realize I really like Dragon Ball. So not only is Dragon Ball Super Broly the movie sort of a retelling of the Saiyan lore, which I like. It was totally a movie made for the fans, and it had a lot of like fan service, like not like the perverted kind, but literally just service for the fans, like things that made fans happy. And I really liked it, even though it was like a really simple story. And I think like if we're judging it by the story depth of it, it's like nothing much, but I really liked it. The moment that really hit me was when they went through the Saiyan backstory and then they time skipped forward to current time. And the thing that was like amazing to me was that every moment that they flashed back to, like that they were going through in the timeline, is everything that we have actually experienced as a watcher, as a viewer. We went through that experience with Goku. This isn't even just the story of the Dragon Ball series. This is like our experiences. I think for me specifically, I realized that Dragon Ball like really encompassed my whole life. Like I had actually pretty much watched Dragon Ball from like middle school to university, and then I realized like even though like a lot of older fans are like adults now and they experienced it like back in the 80s and stuff, but we have similar experiences because it was both of our childhoods, even though it was different time periods. And basically I just like that moment I really liked. It was like, wow, I experienced all of those scenes, we've seen all those scenes, and it hit different. One of the best things that I love about Dragon Ball is that it is comedy first and action second. Like, it's not really about epic fight scenes and, you know, power levels and like power scaling and all that stuff that like modern shonen is into. In fact, I'm not really like, I don't really care about power scaling, to be honest. Like, I know like that's a big draw for Dragon Ball, and I know a lot of fans are like, that's like the main thing that they like about Dragon Ball is the power scaling. But to me, I think Dragon Ball, literally, it is about the friends we made along the way. And I like, unironically, I love that. It's what makes Dragon Ball so charming. The gags also give the characters personality, and it makes them so much more interesting than just like the cookie cutter shonen protagonist who fights and gets defeated sometimes and then works and bankais his way to victory. Dragon Ball has so much charm to it. Like, you'd think that over all these years, so many modern shonens have like taken inspiration from Dragon Ball, and yet to me Dragon Ball is still so unique on its own. Like, there's nothing that has been similar to it, really. Especially like if we're like looking at the big three, all of them get like way too deep in the world building. I would not say Dragon Ball is perfect, but it is so fun. I think the big thing is that it is a simple story. It has very good characters. There's character development. There's like comedy that's funny. Battle scenes are just like super hype. It's like really feel good. There's some like emotional moments, and it kind of has like everything. And I would say the only anime that really comes close to what Dragon Ball was is Gintama. And that's because Gintama is, again, comedy first. It focused more on the comedy section of it, which I feel like a lot of modern like battle shonen manga don't really do. Another thing that I like about Dragon Ball that I kind of don't really see in modern shonen anime is Toriyama is really good at bullshitting. Sometimes when you're like reading the manga or whatever, he's able to get himself out of a plot hole. Another thing is that Dragon Ball's world is so ridiculous. It's less grounded in reality that he can make up shit and it kind of just works. The whole idea of like Krillin dying, right? And then he, you know, and that was like his last chance. Like, he can't be revived anymore, right? The Dragon Balls don't have that power to revive again. But then they kind of just made another world where like, oh, well, the Dragon Balls have to come from somewhere, right? And then they're like, yeah, well, actually they come from this other planet and they have like bigger and better Dragon Balls, and those ones can revive again and have no limit. And then after like, you know, the whole Planet Namek arc, they kind of just brought the Dragon Balls back to Earth and then used the powers there. And I guess like explaining it sounds kind of dumb, but when you're reading it, it's like, oh, it just kind of goes. It just kind of makes sense. Like, yeah, of course. Even like really small, simple things where Goku will say he's like, I don't know, 10 years old or whatever. And then a few chapters later, it'll be like, wait, that doesn't make sense because there's like a timeline error or something. And to correct that like mistake that maybe like Toriyama like forgot or something, and he puts it like in the story, be like shown that, oh, Goku actually can't count, right? Because he's like a kid. And it like kind of just makes sense. Like, yeah, he's a kid, so that's why he can't count, and then that's why there was an error in the previous chapters or something. And I think like those little retcons are within the story, which I really like. And another thing that like I've noticed over the years is a lot of the characters will react very naturally. Like, oh, they're gonna do like plan A or something, but as a viewer you're like, oh, but what about like plan B, right? And then there's a character in the story that will be like, oh, but what about plan B? The characters are actually very smart. Like, they're able to think like a natural, normal person would think in terms of like logic. And I think a lot of modern animes don't really do that. Like, they kind of, because they're so focused on going from point A to point B, the characters are just there to complete a role. And that's why, like, you know, the characters don't think for themselves because they're just literally pieces on a board to play a part. And so that's why you get a lot of like characters who would come off as like really dumb, or they don't ask like proper questions or something, because obviously they're written to fulfill this role so the author can get the plot from point A to point B. And I don't know if that's a great explanation, but it's like kind of my biggest gripe for a lot of animes. The obsession to get from point A to point B. It's like, oh, we need character to get this power, right? So we're gonna have to kill off this other character so that he gets like depressed, and that gives him the motivation to get this power. So we're just gonna, you know, do it point A to point B, which is like character dies a senseless death, and then like protagonist gets the power, and then that's it. And there's no like natural storytelling that to accompany it, and that's something that I always dislike. Even though Dragon Ball is like unrealistic, I think the characters actually think very normally. The characters actually have intelligence, which I really appreciate. And I think not a lot of people look at that part of Dragon Ball, because obviously everyone just cares about the fight scenes and like, oh, it's cool and powers and stuff. And the other thing that a lot of people like about Dragon Ball is the power scaling. And I feel like Toriyama also doesn't seem that interested in the power scaling either, because he literally makes the scouters, which are basically ways to quantify the power levels of all the characters. Maybe I'm not seeing it, but like people use that as like the reason why Dragon Ball kind of sucks, because oh, the characters are limited to this number, and that's why like, oh, power scaling is so linear and like Goku can only get stronger. And I mean, that's definitely a problem, but I think it's not really because of the scouter and like because there is quantifiable levels for it. Personally, I think it doesn't matter. And it's kind of shown in the story that the scouters are usually wrong, right? The scouters, they were used to tell the power levels, but then like Frieza, the Frieza Force, they realized like, oh, the scouters are kind of useless because these Saiyans, these Earthlings, they can hide their power and then kind of just blow it up, right? Like their power is so immense that it's like unquantifiable, which I think is like literally the point of the scouter story. And it kind of just shows like the power scaling is not that important to the story. I think this is why I don't really like Dragon Ball Super, because I feel like it does everything that I praised Dragon Ball for not doing, right? Like Dragon Ball Super kind of brought back the whole like only Goku and Vegeta can get stronger. Like literally Goku is so up there that like everyone else cannot compete anymore. Like Piccolo, like it's so sad because I'm like a Piccolo fan, and I'm seeing I just see that Piccolo just cannot fight. Like he is so weak in Super, and it's like it just makes me so sad because he's just so much weaker than the rest of them. And like Krillin can't fight anymore, and like they have to rely on all these new characters. They have to use like Caulifla and Kale and like all these new Saiyan people to fight the big bad guys. I don't know, it kind of just didn't used to be like that. I mean, maybe it's like modern shonen anime, so that's become more like, yeah, we're gonna just follow that kind of flow of the story where Goku and Vegeta are like the only fighters that can protect Earth now, and like everyone else just doesn't really have it anymore. And yeah, and obviously like there's Dragon Ball Superhero where like Piccolo and Gohan have upgrades, but that's a different thing. I have my opinions on Superhero. Even though like literally Gohan and Piccolo are like my favorite duo, and I think it's because I really like them so much as characters that I just found Superhero very disappointing. I have like so many complaints about it, but I won't get into that because I think that could be like its own video. So anyway, so going like back to Broly, when I watched Broly and I watched that fight scene, it flashed me to when I first watched Naruto, and Naruto was like my first anime, and it inspired me because I really liked the fight scenes. When I saw the fight in Broly, that gave me the same moment. It was like an emotional moment for me. It made me think like, oh, this is why I watch anime, and this is why I like shonen anime, because of these kind of moments. So it's like animated very well. And I know like people kind of complains that they didn't like the 3D part of the fight scene, and to be honest, at that time I had also gotten into Guilty Gear, right? So I became aware of like Arc System Works and how they do their 3D animation. And I love the 2D style of 3D that they do. And so when I saw it in Dragon Ball Broly, I didn't think it was ugly or anything. I just thought like, oh damn, that's so cool. It's like a video game. And like it's like an Arc System Works video game, like Dragon Ball Fighters. Yeah, and I just like, I really liked it. It was really cool. And I love Gogeta, and I just love the colors of his character design. I love the Gogeta blue. It was like so badass. And like, I mean, Piccolo is my favorite character, so I was really happy that he was there and he gets a cute moment. I got my fan service. I'm satisfied. And yeah, and basically that movie, I was like so obsessed with the movie that I watched it so many times, and I regret like not watching it in theaters, because I remember when this was out in theaters, but I waited because I hadn't finished Super yet, like the anime, and I was like, oh, I have to, like, I really wanted to finish Super before I watched the movie, because I didn't want to get like spoiled or anything. Even though, like, in retrospect, I should have just watched the damn movie and then watch Super later. They only reference Super in the beginning, and that's it. But like the rest of the story is kind of standalone, and I feel like, yeah, it was just a really good experience. Like I think, like, I don't know, it's a real like fan service movie. I feel like it's for the fans. I wouldn't say like it's the best movie ever, and it's not like super deep or anything, but for a Dragon Ball fan, it's just like, oh, it's like peak. It's so good. And definitely the ending song by Daichi Miura, the Blizzard song. I was obsessed with that song. I was like listening to it like for months, like every single day, and yeah, I was like really into it. And it was actually, and because of that movie, I started like really getting into like the lore and stuff. I picked up Dragon Ball Legends for a time until I dropped it afterwards, and then I think because of that, I decided to read the manga, and that was when it all like peaked. It was like, okay, Dragon Ball is my favorite thing ever, because the manga is so well done. It's so well paced. It is so interesting. It's a page turn. Because, okay, so one thing is, I'm not really a manga reader, right? Obviously, like, if you look at what I've read compared to how much anime I've watched, it's a very big difference. I get bored reading manga like very easily, and if it's not interesting, or if it has like a lot of like reading, to be honest, I get bored of it really fast. I have to be like really into it to like finish a book or something. So yeah, so when I picked up the manga for Dragon Ball, I think that was the first time I had like really binged a manga before, because I think once I started Dragon Ball, I literally couldn't put it down, and before I knew it, I was almost done the series. And it was like, I spent like a little less than a week then to complete it all, you know, while I had a life. But I was just very surprised how good it is, because especially like, you know, it's not like Dragon Ball was the first manga I've ever read, right? Like, I've read a lot of manga, I've watched a ton of anime, and I kind of went in not really like expecting much, I guess. And then I read the manga and I realized like it's perfect. I think like because the pacing is really what does it. It's like incredibly fast paced, constant action, like constantly something is happening, and it's funny. It's the characters are great. I would actually say, like, if I had to be like critical about it, I would say it's a little too fast. Like sometimes like I remember they just finished like the Cell Saga or whatever, and immediately they go into the next arc. Like, oh, I need like time to rest, you know? Like, it's so action packed, and then you think like, oh, they're gonna have like some you know, like chill down time and like random exposition and stuff, which they do a lot in like modern shonen. But no, it's like, it's just right into the action the next page. It's also made me like really appreciate like simple stories. Like, I think Dragon Ball doesn't like explain its world building. It's just kind of what it is, right? Like, they just have dragons out in the wilds, they have round houses, capsule houses exist, and they don't really have to explain the technological advances of their world and how it all came to be and stuff. Like, things just happen, we just move on, we just keep going. And I really like that, because it just shows that you don't need so many words to explain your world. Because manga, anime is a visual medium. Everything doesn't have to be explained. There's more to be said when nothing is said. And I think that's something that anime specifically kind of forgets about that, because one of the things that I always hate about anime is how much they overcomplicate things. They have to like over explain stuff, and like, no one gives a shit, you know? We kind of just want to move on and get to the action. The biggest thing that makes Dragon Ball good is that it is fun to read and watch. And I am, like, invested in the characters. Like, Goku is not my favorite character. And, like, it's true that Goku can be kind of, like, dumb and simple. I really like Goku because he comes off as a strong and reliable character. I just think he's actually a pretty good protagonist. I actually do like him more than, like, Luffy, I would say. I think modern, like, people nowadays don't like like an overpowered protagonist or like a character that has like no flaws or whatever, but I do think like Goku isn't really an overpowered character either. Like, he gets defeated, he dies, he gets hurt a lot, and he comes back because that's just his personality. He wants to get stronger, and I think that just works. Like, it's not that deep, fam. I still remember when I was like on a trip. I was on a ski trip, and I remember when I opened up Twitter and I saw a post, and it starts off with like a note about Akira Toriyama, and I was like, oh no, like he didn't die or anything, right? And then I read it and I realized like, oh, he passed away. And I think that like amplified my love and appreciation for Dragon Ball, cause if you're there and you read all those comments, and like everyone who's impacted by Toriyama, who's influenced by Toriyama, and it just makes you like realize like how much like Toriyama did to gaming culture, anime culture, and like he changed the world, man. Yeah, I don't know, I just really like Dragon Ball, and it's definitely one of those things where like, I came in thinking like Dragon Ball's kind of overrated, like there's nothing that great about Dragon Ball, it's probably like really simple and like, the basic parts of shonen, but I kind of came out of it being like, it has so much heart to it that I think a lot of shonens nowadays don't really have that. I usually like complain back when the modern animes that are coming out, they had a lot of the forced comedy moments that kind of felt like their editor forced them to include it because that's how shonen manga is, and then it would be awkwardly shoved into the story and it didn't really flow. And I always felt like comedy kind of died recently, but like that's a topic for another day. Yeah, but like just going back to Dragon Ball, like yeah, I realized like I really like Dragon Ball. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching. This video is completely unscripted. I was literally just talking from the dome. But yeah, I had this conversation with a friend, and then I thought, oh, I should have like recorded that conversation. So I'm basically reiterating what I said before. But yeah, I really like Dragon Ball. Obviously, I've said that like 100 times now. And obviously there's like still a lot of things that I didn't talk about. I was pretty vague about everything. I could have gone more in depth with like character relationships, characters, like certain arcs that I like, the iconic moments, and like maybe even like the art of the manga and like the paneling and like really specific stuff about the manga. But obviously that would be way too long. And since it's unscripted, I kind of just talked about whatever came up in my head. So apologies if I made any errors in some facts, I guess. I wasn't really fact checking, it's just like vibes, and with how unhinged the Dragon Ball fandom can be, there's definitely going to be people that are gonna be like, actually this fact and that fact is wrong and your opinion is wrong. But I kind of don't care because I don't really interact with the fandom. I kind of just like Dragon Ball because I like Dragon Ball. So if you liked my video, if you liked what I said and you want to like talk about it, you can like, comment, and even subscribe for more. I do like these unscripted videos because I feel like I can get my ideas out a lot faster than if I scripted them, even though they're a bit more like casual and there's a lot of ums and likes and ers and stuff. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.